Mankiy's fifth principle of economics and the first principle of economic interactions is trade can make everyone better off. What this principle basically means is that trade allows each person to specialize in the activities he or she does best. By trading with others, people can buy a greater variety of goods and services. Most people specialize in the production of a certain good or service. Specialization is a method of production where a business or area focuses on the production of a limited scope of goods or services in order to achieve a greater degree of productive efficiency than they would achieve by producing a different good or service. When people decide what to specialize in, they must consider the advantages and disadvantages of their choice. The opportunity cost of choosing one option is the foregone benefit of the other option. If someone has the absolute advantage in producing a certain good, it means that they produce it using less resources than someone else. If someone has a comparative advantage, it means that they produce a particular good with a lower opportunity cost than someone else. If one country has the advantage in producing one good, and another country has the advantage in producing another good, and each of those countries wants that other good, those countries should specialize, and they would both benefit by trading with one another. Therefore, proving Mankiy's first principle of economic interactions, trade can make everyone better off. However, there is a reason that the word can is included as opposed to the word will. By this I mean that both parties that are directly involved in the trade can definitely benefit by getting what they want. However, after comparative advantage and absolute advantage are taken into consideration, we can see that as a result of specialization, a third party that is not directly involved in the trade can be negatively impacted. For example, say you are in the market for a new laptop and you have found two brands, HP and Sony, that make laptops that best suit your preferences. Eventually, you end up choosing the Sony because it is less expensive. By making this purchase, both you and Sony are better off because you got what you wanted and Sony made the sale. However, perhaps a third party at HP was negatively impacted by this trade because you did not buy their product and their service was unnecessary. Therefore, they were fired from their job because you traded with the competition. This is exactly the reason why Mankiy's fifth principle of economics includes the word can as opposed to the word will. Mankiy's sixth principle of economics and the second principle of economic interactions is markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. A market economy allocates its resources through the decentralized decisions of many firms and households as they interact in markets for goods and services. In a market economy, firms decide whom to hire and what to produce. Households decide which firms to work for and what goods and services they will buy. Therefore, both firms and households interact with one another in the marketplace. Consumers' decisions rely heavily on price, while firms decide what to produce based on the consumer's demands. The market possesses the power of resource allocation. What this means is that in project management, resource allocation is the scheduling of activities and the resources required by those activities while taking into consideration the resource availability and project time. Mankiy's sixth principle states that markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity, suggesting that other systems can also be useful in organizing economic activity. Economic systems attempt to answer three basic questions. What is to be produced, how is it to be produced, and lastly, for whom is it to be produced? Instead of a market system which heavily relies on private business, a country can choose to have a command system or a traditional system. A command system operates by relying on the government to answer the three questions. A traditional system operates through bartering. Typically, the market system is the most efficient way to answer the three questions. In a market system, producers and consumers are looking to benefit from one another. The products that are produced are determined by the consumers. The method of production is determined by the producers. And who receives the finished product depends on consumer purchasing power. Mankiy's seventh principle of economics and the third principle of economic interactions is government can sometimes improve market outcomes. The invisible hand of the market is a metaphor conceived by Adam Smith to describe the self-regulating behavior of the marketplace. Mankiy's principle that the government can sometimes improve market outcomes comes into play when the invisible hand fails to allocate resources efficiently. What this means is that the market on its own may cause market failure through externalities, market power, and unequal distribution of wealth. The government has the task of regulating, auditing, and monitoring activities. For example, a dry cleaning factory may increase pollution with chemicals, and the government can introduce regulating policies to protect the environment. One result of market failure is market power. Market power is the ability of a single economic factor to have a substantial influence on market prices. One possible solution to this problem is to have the government regulate the prices that monopolies charge. An example of this was the implementation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. In a market economy, income is not distributed equally among all people. In an effort to lessen the gap between the wealthy and the poor, the government may introduce a new tax or a social welfare system. Another option is for the government to raise the minimum wage. These are just a few solutions that the government may implement to lessen the gap. Similar to Mankiw's first two principles of economic interactions, the third may not always be true. Some people favor a more laissez-faire approach and prefer to keep activities between private parties free from government restrictions, tariffs, subsidies, and regulations. People who believe in a laissez-faire approach fear the outcomes of government failure. Government failure is a situation in which intervention by the government that is intended to correct a market failure creates inefficiency and leads to a misallocation of scarce resources. For example, placing taxes on goods and services can raise prices artificially and distort the efficient operation of the market. Additionally, taxes on income can create disincentive. Fixing prices can lead to shortages and surpluses. There is a shortage when the government fixes a price below the market rate, and there is a surplus when the government fixes a price above the market rate.